Do you ever notice how many reporters working for conservative news outlets really depend upon liberal newspapers to validate their reporting? I actually saw one the other day, and the tone of it was, hey everybody, look, the New York Times just validated my story, told you it was right. Well, when you're a reporter, you're supposed to validate the story before you publish it. So when you publish it, you don't need to wait on the approval of anybody else to verify your facts, because you have already verified your facts. And so you'll forgive me if it seems I'm about to do what I accuse other people of being guilty of. Hey everybody, the New York Times, they just ran a big story about black women not reporting black rape. Wow. How many times have we done that story? A bunch of times. We've done a story 3 times in the last month, at least 3 times. Stories, articles, videos, podcasts. And I wrote about this in both of my books. Black women don't report rape. I remember the first time I heard this. It was Melissa Harris Perry on MSNBC, our Saturday morning show. She's looking at somebody, a writer for Foreign Policy magazine, and she explains to her very patiently that black women do not report rape and domestic violence because black women know that white racist police officers are going to brutalize their men, and so they don't call.
So I start with a little bit of trepidation in this conversation, in part because I know that some of the critiques of this is the very idea that Western press, that those who are not from these nations, who are not Muslim ourselves, who are not part of these traditions, can look at your article and say, look at how horrible those men or those societies or that religion is. And it's something, it's part of why, for example, we have an underreporting of rape and domestic violence in African American communities, because we know the violence enacted on black men by police, so we often don't call.
And then we go over to a story in Huffington Post, just a couple weeks ago. They did a story about black women getting raped, and they said, and they told us in that story, quote, black women are trained to protect the race at all costs, unquote. And we move ahead over, I think it was the Griot or Root, I forget what. Anyway, and we did a video on it. A woman did a video about black women getting raped and how black women don't report it. And it goes, and she goes on this for about 8 minutes. At about 8 minutes 30 seconds, she drops the truth bomb on us. She tells us why not only black women are getting raped, but why black women don't report it. It's all about white racism. Surprise. So anyway, now comes the New York Times. Headline, you're not supposed to betray your race. The challenge faced by black women accusing black men. So I'm glad the New York Times did this story, but they still missed. This is more of a miss than a hit. Let's see why don't we just blow through a few paragraphs of it. When Meredith Wilson decided to publicly accuse Virginia's lieutenant governor for rape, she knew she would face a backlash most women who accuse powerful men of sexual assault do. But she also feared that as a black woman, she would face added scrutiny because the prominent politician was African American too. Quote, you're not supposed to betray your race, Mrs. Watson said in her first interview since she The lieutenant governor said, I didn't rape that chick. Then they go, well, black women, in addition to all the scrutiny women get, black women can face added blowback, including suggestions from other African Americans. They are being disloyal to their race by calling out the prominent men among them. Listen, this is not just about prominent men. This is about any guy. More on that in a minute. The allegations have spurred fresh conversations. I'm tired of all these conversations, right? It's like we're having a conversation about whether black women should report rape or not. We're going to have a conversation about that. Only very, very, very sick people would sit there and say, no, I'm not going to report that rape. Remember, we're not just talking about rape against a woman talking about rape against herself. We're talking about a woman seeing another person getting raped, a woman knowing that person, that guy is a rapist. Same for guys. We're talking about a guy who sees people getting raped, who knows about rape, who may, and doesn't do anything. That's what we're talking about. It's hard. If this is the first time you've ever heard anything about like this, it's really hard just grasping the monstrosity that exists inside somebody if they know that somebody's a rapist and they're raping people and they look at that guy and go, "Hey, my brother, what's up? Your secret's safe with me." That's what they're saying. "Hey, my brother, you getting your good raping in I Don't worry. I won't tell anybody." Eldridge Cleaver, in his famous book, Soul on Ice. Remember that book, Soul on Ice? Every college kid in the 60s read it. I read it. Even though I wasn't a college kid in the 60s. But he talked about how he and his friends would get into a car, drive into white neighborhoods and rape white girls. And he said he viewed it as a revolutionary act. Okay. Whatever. The woman who accused the lieutenant governor, she met one of her black male friends. He told her that he could not believe she was going to do this to a black man. On social media, strangers described her as opportunistic, dismissed her as a pawn to take down Mr. Fairfax, and equated her to the white woman who falsely accused Emmett Till of flirting with her. Quote, said this woman, Ms. Watson, I feel like I've been torn apart. I feel like I've been torn apart the most by my own community. Quite frankly, as a black woman, we shouldn't have to keep going through this and bearing it in silence, just like these things can happen to us. Here's the money graph. There are a variety of underlying reasons for this desire to sometimes give black men a break, experts say. Distrust in the criminal justice system is part of it. So is the acknowledgement that black men face considerable hurdles on their way towards success. The underlying sentiment is similar to the hesitancy of some black residents to call 911 on other black people. Will they get a fair shake? Question mark. Coming forward against a black man who was liked by his community, I don't know if anything is as difficult as that in terms of a situation a survivor can be in, said some goofy-ass professor from Boston University. And then a city councilman in Richmond, Virginia, a friend of the lieutenant governor, he said, it's understandable because women are always making false charges against black men for rape. Here's a weird story. Here's a weird story they included in here. There's a woman named Aaliyah Young. She's a black activist in Chicago. She often protests police abuse against black people, and she was raped, and she didn't tell anybody about it. These types, quote, back to the article, those types of attitudes and the suggestion that black women have a responsibility toward black men have made Aaliyah Young hesitate to publicly discuss her own experiences of being sexually assaulted by a high school classmate. Ms. Young often protests police abuse against black people, which factored into her decision not to call out her own attacker. If I'm about the black agenda, she said, I can't go against black people, said Ms. Young, 17, now a freshman at DePaul University. By the way, can somebody tell me what the black agenda is? Is it written down somewhere? More than 4 in 10 black women experience physical violence from an intimate partner during their lifetimes. Some people say that's higher. Yet research suggests that black women may be less likely to report being sexually assaulted to the police because of negative experiences with law enforcement. Prosecutors may be less likely to bring charges when sexual assault victims are black, and jurors may be less likely to convict. Wow! Boy, the New York Times just said black people don't vote to convict black rapists. They just kind of like dumped it in this article, one little clause, and they dumped it in there and ran away from it. Then let's bring back the professor from Boston University. Quote, "We have to ask ourselves, if the cost of not bringing a good brother down is always silencing the black women, what the hell kind of racial progress is that? You don't make progress on half the race, period." So this article was all about the prominent guys, but that the reality is not prominent guys. The reality is day in and day out guys. We got women all over black women in black universities, a place like Spelman. There was a big article about it we talked about earlier. She said she was raped. She went to the school, and all of a sudden she started getting visiting. Everybody started visiting her to remind her the stuff we just heard in this article. Like what this fella, I mean, he's already the victim of so much white racism. Why do you want to heap onto that with these accusations of rape? And by the way, didn't you lead him on?
Please, sir, I want some more.
And then the New York Times dumps that little sentence in there. Oh yeah, black juries don't tend not to convict black rapists. Wow. That's called a Bronx jury. How's that working out for your numbers, New York? Your rape numbers. You get a black defendant in there accused of rape, and the black jury says, well, it's not really rape, it's just offensive touching. Next. And so the rape numbers are already really bad. Now, the New York Times just said, as bad as they are, they're really way, way worse for the fellas. Black on white rape is enormously out of proportion compared to white on black rape, which is almost zero. The black rape rate is way bigger than the white rape rate. And as bad as it is, it's even way, 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 way bigger. Now the New York Times has come in and let us know. They're giving us the blessing. It's okay to talk about this now, people. Black men are getting a free ride on rape. Because all over the country, people in denial, deceit, and delusion about the level of black violence, black criminality, black dysfunction, they give them a free ride because they don't want to make the black kids angry.
Of silence.